Okay, well, we're back from break, and that was actually a very quick break. I want to make sure that you see the phone number on the screen, so it is 727-8750. If you have any questions about tonight's issues, feel free to call in. So getting back to what you might want to do as a patient, if you're healthy, then basically the idea is to protect your health and to keep doing the things you're doing. If you are ill and do have a chronic illness, and now is the time to look at your illnesses and look at which diseases you might have. So let's suppose you have diabetes. This would be the time to look at your supplies that you need to test your diabetes. This is the time to look at what medicines you need. If you have COPD, it's time to make sure that if you rely on oxygen, that you have a backup generator to run your oxygen concentrator, that you have backup tanks if you need that. It's time to make sure that you have ample supply of your breathing medications. And same with a diabetic. If you have insulin, make sure you have a way to keep it cool. Don't let it overheat. Make sure you have ample supplies. One of the things I've been suggesting to my patients for a long time is that you never know what could happen at any particular moment, whether it be an economic collapse, whether it be some type of issue. You should be asking your healthcare provider, to write you a prescription outside of what you normally turn into your insurance company, even in cash and generic, so that you can build up a 3 to 6 month supply of prescriptions. And what you can do in that case, most prescriptions, if they're pills, if they're canisters, they'll last a long time. But if it's a pill, let's suppose you go up to your doctor and you say, "Hey, doctor, can I get a 6 month supply of my diabetic medication, metformin?" And he says, "Sure," and it's generic, and you can get it cheaply at Smith's or Walmart, and you pay $5 or $10 or whatever their price for that is. What you're going to do is you're going to put that supply in the refrigerator, and you're going to keep it in a cold, dark place. And then when you get a new monthly prescription, you're going to rotate that. So it goes into the back when the one you bought comes out to the front. That way you always have a fresh supply of 3 to 6 months of prescriptions in the actual refrigerator. And if you keep things cool and dry, they'll actually last much longer than their expiration date. The other thing you might want to be looking at is extra gloves. Picking up some extra gloves, picking up some extra sanitizers at your home, some Lysol wipes and things of that nature, Clorox. Bleach has a short half-life, meaning it doesn't last but 6 months. Its potency seems to drop off after that. Worse if it's been in a hotter environment. So the summertime, bleach doesn't last very long. Colder environments, it does. You may want to think about the rule of threes. For those that have COPD and need oxygen, the rule of threes in a disaster says that you can only go 3 minutes without any air. You can only go 3 days without water, and you can only go 3 days without food. So thinking about that, the average person needs anywhere from about 3 gallons of water a day to survive. 1 gallon to drink, 1 gallon to supposedly clean themselves, and the other one for sanitation. Now, I know you could cut those other 2 down, but theoretically, the minimum water you would need per day is 500 cc's to maintain a half a liter to maintain volume from insensible losses. During a viral infection, and if you're sick, you're going to need much, much more water than that. So buying a little extra water could be one of those things you might want to think about stocking up on. Water purification, recycling water. Those are also very, very useful items to investigate and to think about. N95 mask. Those are easily found at hardware stores. They do protect against most viral particles if there was a pandemic and you had to go outside, and some things are airborne. Those could be very, very helpful. Now, I'm not talking about gas masks and things of that nature. I'm talking about simple little bitty masks. They really don't prevent you from spreading something, but they may help to prevent you from obtaining something, certainly in short periods. Those are some of the simple things that you might think about. Food supplies, non-perishable items are good. Flashlights, batteries, those types of things. I mean, we do live in an earthquake area, and those are things that are, I think we're more likely to have an earthquake than we are a terrorist attack. So those are things that you definitely want to think about in short interruptions of your day. So, with that in mind, other diseases like, if you have heart disease, it's very important for you to think about having an ample supply of your cardiac medications. Make sure that you go ahead and talk to your cardiologist about getting those particular prescriptions, and making sure you get those supplies and look at their perishable dates. If you're very, very ill, I can promise you that the local healthcare system here would not be able to help you. Remember, the government is not here to help you, and in a true emergency, you are going to be on your own. You might seek out other people in your local community, in your local area, who might be able to work with you to help you, in those conditions. If you have family that's close by, talk to them, exchange numbers, make sure that you have a way to communicate with them. If the power goes out, for them to check on you, and stock up extra oxygen tanks. Do whatever you take, but you know your situation better than anybody else does. You know what your needs are. If you have an open wound, make sure you stock up on dressings and irrigation supplies. If you're have arthritis or you have some other issues, make sure that you are stocking up on medications, stocking up on Tylenol, those types of pain relievers. Those are all really, really simple things. And make sure that you stick close by your friends. I know that Pahrump is not really an area where we suffer from a lot of crime, but if you consider this fact that we live close to a town where the food supply evaporates in 3 days, Vegas will certainly burn to the ground within a very short period of time if people can't supply their foods. And there are 55 million Americans on food stamps. And if they can't be fed, there will be serious issues to bear for that. So we live close by a hot spot, and so it is very important for you to look at those issues. I'm not trying to breed fear and paranoia into you, but it is important that you do look at those things. I would like to make sure that we talk about anything else that we needed. And one of the things I wanted to bring up also was I really wanted to talk about diabetes. And so one of the things that we'll talk about on the next show is about diabetes type 1, and how we're going to talk about what is type 1, what is type 2, and I can go into a lot of detail. If you know diabetes, you do know medicine. It is one of these diseases that is very, very, very complex, and it takes on so many different facets and so many different issues. As you know, type 1 diabetes is insulin-dependent diabetes, and that was the old term. It really is a juvenile diabetic. It really starts at an early age, and it seems to be related to a autoimmune disorder, and it has been related to some infections, and it's an insidious disease, meaning it doesn't happen overnight, even though it seems like it does. Children are very resilient and they don't always get their diabetes, overnight, as adults do too. Their diabetes, it takes a time to develop, and the same is with children. It's just over a much shorter span. And what ends up happening is they start to experience towards the later phases of that, they don't actually gain weight like adult diabetics do. They actually start to lose weight. They obviously have polydipsia. They become very thirsty. Polyphagia. They become very hungry. They urinate all the time. They may become agitated. They just start acting differently, and those are the things that may tip you off to a child who may have diabetes. So they get run-of-the-mill cold and flus. Coxsackie virus supposedly was one of the viruses that was attached to the diabetic regimen. I mean, if you've got a virus, your body builds antibodies to that virus, and those antibodies affect the islet cells and the beta cells of the pancreas, and they slowly wipe them out. Some of the newer therapies that are developing seem to be at almost like a viral infection. They seem to there have been some promising vaccines that might help if you can catch these diabetic in an earlier stage. So juvenile diabetes is a correct term. Insulin dependent, there are plenty of adults who do need insulin, but they are not really to type 1 diabetic. They're a mixed type 1, type 2. They lose their insulin capabilities. I see a lot of patients who are giving large doses of insulin, 50 units, 100 units. I mean, it's a massive amount of insulin, and it's a point of diminishing returns because they're insulin resistant. Their body doesn't respond well to the insulin due to the obesity, and all that does is just make them gain more weight, and creates all types of issues. So we're reaching the end of our show. Again, please pay attention to the news. Please think about your own medical situation. Please read some books on disaster preparedness. Take the time to invest a little bit of time and money into things that might benefit you. Do keep some supplies of your medications and oxygen. Do take an inventory of what you need on a daily basis to survive. Know that in the case of a true emergency, the things that you cherish most and the things you take for granted will not be there. And it is very important that you list those items and start to slowly accumulate those items in a moment's notice, so they could disappear and never appear again. And like I said, this is a 3 to 6 month issue. Anything longer than 6 months is probably a global killer, and it really won't matter much at that point anyway. And with that, I will say adieu and good night, and thank you for tuning in, Pahrump.